In the great words of Lil Wayne from the Forever song with Drake, Kanye, and Eminem. I will never stop like I'm running from the cops. Life is such an effing roller coaster, then it drops. But what should I scream for? This is my theme park. That's how I'm feeling right now. I feel like, why should I stop making videos just because I'm piled up on college work and I'm behind on deadlines and I can't get stuff done and I still got a lot of work to do? Why should that stop me from doing what I love, baby, which is making videos for you guys? And on the beautiful night sky today, which you cannot see, but you know, I took a picture. It's beautiful. There's a lot of clouds outside. There's a full moon. The clouds are like formed around the full moon, so you got like a whole portrait out there. It's cold though. It's real cold. I get ashy. I look like Casper the Ghost once I come back in the house, so I can't stay out for too long, but it looks beautiful. So I thought, let me make a video. And what other better video would there be to be grateful for on this wonderful night than talking about a couple Goosebumps books that I feel like deserve more love? Because these ones, while they aren't the best thing out there, while they aren't super extraordinary in terms of an overall package, you know what I mean? They have fantastic things to them, and I feel like they deserve more attention because I enjoyed these books quite a bit, and I feel like they got stuff to them. They got action scenes, they got premises, they got certain things in there that I feel like are missing from most other Goosebumps books you're probably going to read, and you'll only find it really within these ones. So let's take a look at a couple of the Goosebumps books that I want to talk about, which you probably know from the thumbnail of the video, but let's reveal them right here and now. And that is none other than Curse of the Mummy's Tomb and How to Kill a Monster. Very different in terms of, I think, chronology, I don't know how you say it, chronology. Essentially, you have How to Kill a Monster, which came out later in the Goosebumps series. I believe it came out right after Ghost Camp, and then after that was Legend of the Lost Legend, which, by the way, probably one of the craziest lineups for like 3 books you can have one after another. You have Ghost Camp, which is like a cult favorite. That one is well loved by people. I heard it's very dark, very scary. I've not read it, but I've heard great things. You have How to Kill a Monster, which I feel like is an underrated gem. You know, some people think it's average, some people ignore it, but I feel like it's got a lot of underrated stuff to it that, you know, the formula and the idea have not been replicated in Goosebumps. And then you have Legend of the Lost Legend, which is one of the worst Goosebumps books according to many people. So it's quite the trinity. So you have How to Kill a Monster, and you have Curse of the Mummy's Tomb, which I believe is one of the first, I like to say 10 Goosebumps book. Is it number 6? I don't know. I think it's one of the first 10 Goosebumps books that came out. So this is one of the OG ones that dropped, where Stein was still kind of figuring out what he wanted to do, figuring out his style, getting his groove. So you have variety there. And I feel like both of these books offer something that everybody can at least maybe enjoy to a certain extent, that can be remembered in the long run. And I feel like they both have their own unique, underrated, great things to them that people don't recognize or talk about enough, because these 2 books are not talked about a whole lot. Now, Curse of the Mummy's Tomb is talked about a little bit more because obviously, you know, it's the first Mummy book. People are attracted to it. But then the episode adaptation was not of this book. It was of Return to the Mummy's Tomb, I believe. So that one got more focus. And you have, you know, Dummy Meets the Mummy, you know, modern books that are highly regarded. You have The Mummy Walks, which is one of the craziest premises I believe I heard for a Goosebumps book. You have war in there, real soldiers and war going on. And then you have, you know, Diary of a Mad Mummy, the GYG. You have Don't Wake a Mummy, the Goosebumps episode. Adaptation of a short story, but the Goosebumps episode is iconic because it has a terrifying monster design and a great story. I remember that one scaring me a lot as a kid. So Curse of the Mummy's Tomb doesn't get much attention, but here's my deal with Curse of the Mummy's Tomb. The climax, the second half to this book, is probably one of the most dark, disturbing, action-packed, real life movie kind of climaxes that you can read within a Goosebumps book. And overall, while I do understand that, Gabe and Sari are kind of annoying characters, they're not that likable. I feel as though most of the book has a pretty good setup to it. I mean, you take place in Egypt. I know people don't like the whole Egypt setting, but this was back in the day when it's still somewhat, a little bit able to do. Not like nowadays where it's overdone to the sand of Egypt itself. But back in the day, I can understand why Stein went for it. It's his own version of the Universal Monsters mummy books. And takes place in Egypt. You have Gabe in the tomb of a pyramid. You have him getting freaked out by how dark and eerie it is. First of all, I love the setting of pyramid. I love Egyptian architecture and art. So when I hear, him being within this dark, deep, tunnel of the Egyptian pyramid, him seeing the hieroglyphics, him seeing, spider webs and cobwebs, potentially bones, skeletons of, previous pharaohs and stuff. And then you get, the scene where he gets scared, fake out scared, but a fake out scare potentially of the mummy. You have a scene in the book which is actually like real life horror where it's a kidnapping scene. It's somebody trying to kidnap Gabe and Sari, which is real life horror. Kidnapping kids is unfortunately quite a big problem that happens, in the modern age. Has happened throughout many decades. Back then it happens unfortunately a lot now. So that's real life horror. It could really scare kids. The idea of being kidnapped, the idea of running away and trying to free yourself. And then you have one of the darkest, most action-packed climaxes that you can imagine for a Goosebumps book. You have the villain reveal. And I have to say, Ahmed is one of the darkest, most sinister Goosebumps villains out there. This guy is a murderer. Slight spoiler. Okay, but I'm talking about why these books are so great, so I have to give a little bit of a slight spoiler, right? So this is a slight spoiler. He may or may not be involved with some murders. He may have caught some bodies, and the way he caught these bodies are quite very so dark. And let's just say they may or may not be tied to the mummification process that are done to pharaohs and important people of Egyptian past. So for those of you who are aware of stuff involving the mummification process, aka the giant hook that goes up your nose to pull out your brains, the organs in the jars, cutting you open, filling you up with flowers and stuff like that. The mummification process is super dark, but it's not really as sinister because it's dealing with people that are already dead and then honoring their corpses. But if you had a potential serial killer who killed you using those methods as the finale acts to your deaths, that's dark. That's quite dark. And you have the main villain of this book essentially dealing with that, being a serial killer, luring in victims, having connections to an Egyptian past, kind of protecting their culture and religion to an extent, taking the lives of essentially innocent people and explorers. You have the potential of people being burned alive in the book, people being thrown into tar pits, people being mummified, killed. Very dark. And you have even, the main characters getting hurt. You have the main villain coming with a knife and threatening to cut him open, stab him. You have the idea of him carrying around a torch and him even hitting one of the characters in the head with the torch, putting victims in sarcophaguses ready to be burnt alive, tarred, and then put through the mummification process. And I'm like, dude, this isn't a Goosebumps book. This kind of dark movie material like scene is within a Goosebumps book. One of the very first, I believe, number 6, again, one of the first 10 Goosebumps books to ever hit the scene officially. This is in there. So that's why I have to commend this book, because it has some really dark stuff in it. It has some, again, real life horror involving kidnapping. It has a great setting with Egypt, the dark, scary tunnels of pyramids, the idea of mummies, the idea of the horrors behind the mummification process. You have the horrors of a potential killer tied to the culture of Egypt and royalty and stuff like that. And all that gets tied within an action-packed book. And I think that the ending is actually pretty wholesome. It actually feels good. It actually feels like a wrap up to something I would see of a movie. And when I'm reading a kid's horror book, if I'm reading a short story, or even if I'm reading adult horror, and it feels like I'm watching a movie, it feels like I'm watching something unfold in front of me, that's how I know I got a special book. Because when it feels like I'm actually watching something great unfold in front of me, like if I was at the theater watching an old school mummy movie, Universal Monster, something like that, that's a great feeling to me. And seeing Stein's touch on it, his flair, that's sort of what makes the book better for me. And even though I'm not gonna give this book an outrageous score. Honestly, it would be like a 7.8 out of 10. A good book for me. Is it the best thing in the world? No, but I think it's underrated. I feel like it doesn't get talked about as much. And I feel like it's a good book. I feel like it's an interesting and fun and creepy and scary and, what I'm saying, brutal and dark book that people should read and check out. So if you've not been hearing a lot of talk and conversation about Curse of the Mummy's Tomb, I'm recommending to you to go check it out because you might be surprised, like I was, like a few other people are. I think that it's actually pretty good. And if people give it more hate than it should be, I don't agree with that. I mean, it's your opinion, but I disagree. I feel like it deserves actually more love than what it actually gets. And that's my first choice. The first out of the two books I want to talk about, Curse of the Mummy's Tomb, 7.88 out of 10 book. I feel like deserves more attention and you need to go check out. Now, the second book is actually a childhood favorite episode of mine. The episode of this book is a childhood favorite. I absolutely love the monster design. I love the way they shot the scenes in the episode. And when I read the book, I was like, wow, the book's actually better than the episode. And the episode went down a little bit for me, but the book actually, it surprised me. I actually enjoyed it. I thought it was a fun book. I like the premise of the monster. Again, I love the setting. I love the idea of a dark, boggy swamp, gators, cottonmouths, snakes, mud, cypress trees, all that stuff, super dark. Hearing creepy whistling across the swamp. You don't know if it's the bog, the gases, the fumes within the swamps, if it's creatures, if it's birds, but this unnatural whistling throughout the book. And then you have this very interesting and fun premise. You have these odd grandparents and you're wondering what's going on in this household. You find out the premise, the reveal to the story. The monster's imposing, it's huge, it's threatening, it's got a dope design, it's pretty intimidating. And the creativity, the Home Alone flair to this story where you have to take down these villains in creative ways and traps. I thought it was super interesting. And the ending to this book is really kind of ominous. And I like it because it sort of basically throws an extension line and says, maybe it's not just how to kill a monster. Maybe you got to worry about a little bit more than just one monster. But that's all I'm going to say. And that book is How to Kill a Monster. How to Kill a Monster is a really fun book to me. First of all, I love the swamp setting. Again, it's not as iconic as something like Fever Swamp, where Fever Swamp is very much, not only in the title of the book, but it's described, given vivid detail, has these really ominous, unique characteristics. This is like any ordinary like swamp you would go out there, but just the vivid descriptions of, a swamp, an untampered, unfiltered, pure wild swamp. And the creepiness of it, the fact that you got murky waters and swamp, mud that can basically suck up your feet and you won't be able to escape. You got these creepy cypress trees that hang like ghosts within the wind. You have, these creatures that you can never really see and they pose harm. You have venomous snakes. You have alligators posted up in these murky waters, waiting by the water line, ready to ambush you. And again, you hear this creepy whistling. The swamp is super dark at night. You got all these creatures. And there's the idea that's explained by, I think Clark, Clark, where, there are many wild animal species that are never discovered. And you don't know what might be out there. And you have no idea what kind of apex predators might be within the swamps, this untampered wilderness that nobody can ever penetrate. Pause. But it's true. So you get into the book, you have Clark and Gretchen. They're basically these kids who are getting babysit by their grandparents. They're spending some time with them. They live out in the bayou, out in the swamp. And they have this rickety, this large house, but it's a rickety old wooden house, covered in, moss and cypress stuff. out in the middle of the swamp, and they hear these creepy noises. You have Clark having comic books and having this overactive imagination. You have Gretchen is kind of the more, calm and more reasonable older sibling figure here. And then you have the grandparents who are kind of creepy. They're nice, but they're creepy. They always feel like they're hiding something. They're a little bit off, like they're like a little bit too much smiling, like, like kind of like the Get Out parents, or like, what is it, The Visit, where she's like, honey, can you get in the oven to clean it? I'm like, I don't think so. Those kind of grandparents. It's kind of the vibes they give off. Um, so what ends up happening is they find out, or at least Gretchen sees after exploring the kind of rickety old house, that there is a monster in one of the rooms that's locked up in there. And when the grandparents go out to, I think, go grocery shopping or do something within the town, they have to drive out of the swamp and go to the town. These kids end up finding a note on the refrigerator that basically explains the story that Grandpa went out hunting, shot a monster, actually, never mind. That's the episode. The book one is actually he went out. I believe a monster had entered their house. The grandparents locked it in a room, and they couldn't find a way to get rid of it or how to take care of it, because if they let it out the room, it's going to hurt them or potentially kill them. So they decided, we're just going to feed this thing. We're going to keep it there, and that's going to be the end of it. So Gretchen and Clark, obviously it's too late. The monster gets free, starts rampaging around the house, trying to kill him, trying to eat him, and they have to basically home alone this shit, except, it's not dealing with robbers, it's dealing with a monster, like for real a monster. And this thing has a dope design. It's described as this like 9 foot tall, like it has like the body of a gorilla. It has green fur that looks like the moss and cypress, kind of like trees that are out there. It's got an alligator head, and inside of its eyes, when you look into the eyes of this creature, the pupils actually are like water. It's like actually like water inside, and they have worms or little leeches swimming inside the eyeballs within the pupils. Super dark, super creepy, and they say it smells like the swamp. It sounds like the swamp out there. The whistling, the gator noises, the bellowing, all that stuff. And this creature starts rampaging, trying to kill him. They have to, find ways to take care of it, whether it be, potentially leading it down, a giant drop, whether it be poisoning food and trying to kill it. They have to figure out different ways to deal with it. And you kind of get this action-packed book. It's intense. You have, locked in this house with this creature that can take any one of them out, and it's super intense. My favorite scene in the whole book is the kitchen scene. I love that kitchen scene where they basically have to poison this rhubarb pie that their grandmother made for them, and they basically throw in, like, I think drain cleaner, like soap. They put in old mothballs. They put in like bleach and stuff, and they basically try to poison it. And once they poison the pie, they have to hide under this giant dining table that's in the kitchen, and the monster starts like going inside the kitchen. It jumps on top of the table, starts sniffing around. It goes up to the oven, and it grabs the oven door, and it rips it and sends it flying. I'm talking about flying like a pen. Like if I threw this pen across, it just sends that shit flying like a frisbee. And you realize this thing is not playing, and it's trying to hunt them down and eat it and kill it. They gotta find all these different ways to deal with it, and that's a super intense scene. I love the kitchen scene. And one of the best parts of this book is the ending, because in the ending of the book, you get this idea that, there's a reveal by the grandparents from a second note that apparently went under the refrigerator that they found. And this second note is basically saying, the way that Clark basically talked about undiscovered species of animal. Yeah, species does not mean just one. And maybe there might be some brothers and sisters or other creatures of the race that may have a thing or two to do with one of their kind being taken. And let's just say that whistling, that creepy whistling throughout the swamp that Gretchen keeps on hearing throughout the book, maybe it might be some type of call or sound that is tied to something unnatural out in the swamps. So yeah, super creepy, super ominous ending. I loved it a lot. And I love this book. I think it's super creative. I think it's fun. I think it has one of the best monsters in it. I think it has some interesting, fun stuff in it. Again, like poisoning a pie with drain cleaner, mothballs, and stuff that can actually kill humans as well. I thought that's super interesting. I love the chase scenes in the book because they feel intense because you're within this enclosed space and a house that they're not familiar with, and they have to navigate and run away from this thing that can take them out. You know, you have an imposing monster, you have an ominous, imposing ending, you have a setting, this isolation within this swamp that even if they run outside, they're basically going to get lost. They're going to get trapped within the dangers of the swamp. And again, you don't know what's out there, right? So there's a great setup to the book. I love it. I think it's fun. And again, I feel it's underrated. I know this is a cult favorite for some, members in the community. I'm with you there. I love this. I love the monster design in the episode. I thought the episode was fun as well. And I think this one is an underrated gem as well. I don't think people give it credit. People don't talk about How to Kill a Monster a lot. It's often forgotten. It's often not brought up. And I feel like it deserves more attention. And with the Curse of the Mummy's Tomb, yeah, it's going to be talked about more because it's the first mummy book. But at the same time, I don't feel like it gets that appreciation for how dark the climax is. And having one of the best Goosebumps villains we've been introduced to, and he's never talked about in terms of Goosebumps villains. So I have to give credit to both of these books. I feel like they deserve some more love. So for all of you out there watching, checking in, tuning in, go check out and read How to Kill a Monster. Go read Curse of the Mummy's Tomb and enjoy it. Maybe see if you like it or don't. If you do enjoy it, feel free to let me know. Let me know your thoughts. What do you like about it? I think you'll have a fun time. I think you'll find it refreshing for both of the books, especially with the darkness of Curse of the Mummy's Tomb and then the unique formula and idea and Home Alone style done in a unique way to How to Kill a Monster. So yeah, those are my recommendations for you guys. Just wanted to give attention to some hidden gems out in the Goosebumps community. And that's all I have for this video. If you guys enjoyed, just like the subscribe button, which is as red as my hoodie, hit it down below. Hit that subscribe button, become a member of my community, and also hit that like button. That's a way for you guys that is free to let me know you guys support the videos and let me know what you guys want. Also be interactive. Comment down in the comment section how you feel about these two books. What are some underrated gem Goosebumps books that you feel need to get more attention? And did you agree or disagree with my points? And that's all I have for today. I hope you guys enjoyed, and deuces. I kept the doodle formula here just because I knew I was going to get thirsty. I should have saved this for the upcoming Goose Junkies podcast episode. Plug, by the way, shameless self-plug. We're going to be talking about Hungry Hounds and The Barking Ghost. 2 story segments and episodes that are dog shit, terrible, which is going to be fun because they're universally not liked. So we can shit on them, we can grab the toilet paper, we can have a fun time. So stay tuned for the Goose Junkies episode coming out. It's going to be a fun one. Cheers to that. Deuces, people. And go outside. Enjoy the fresh air. Enjoy the night sky. Unless you live in a place like me where it's freezing cold, I need lotion real bad, people. Real bad.